Hello everyone, welcome back to Classic Automotive Services. Right, this week we had the Mark II Jag in, well the Jaguar 240 in for its full service, and the core plug that was leaking along with the front coolant hose that was perished. So we got all that sorted out. It was a major service, so that consisted of all fluids changed, brake fluid, gearbox, axle oil, etc. So it had everything done. All the grease points on the car were all done. So that's, it was a major service. So that's done and gone. And then we've been pressing on with the Lotus, getting that sorted out. So we started off by doing the rear wheel bearings and a little bit of suspension work on the back end, which we're going to have a look at in a minute. And then we've started on the engine to get the engine, so it's basically ready to go back in. So again, this is basically having a major service and been checked over, fixed the oil leaks, as it was leaking oil in, well, most places it possibly could. Some worse than others. The worst leak was definitely this lower cam carrier, as this lower cam carrier was leaking quite badly on this side. You can actually see on the exhaust still, you've got a lot of grimy oil around here onto the exhaust, so it's thick and a bit grimy here. So it was leaking quite badly out this side. So we're in the process of rectifying that. We have now got all the gaskets for it, and basically going to re-gasket and seal pretty much the whole engine, everything external. We're going to put new gaskets on. So we're going to also drop the sump off of it and wash it out, make sure there's no sludge or anything in the bottom of it. Again, new gasket on it. So it's coming along. We've also done the valve clearances on it. As what I did is I removed the cam belt. I timed it up, removed the cam belt as we're putting a new belt on it. And then I turned the engine, I turned the crankshaft 90 degrees from TDC. So it puts it into what I would call a safe area. So that way, if you from TDC, if you turn the engine 90 degrees, the top end obviously won't move because there's no cam belt on it. It makes all the pistons so they're down the bores, in the middle of the bores. That then allows you to turn each camshaft individually so you can check all your clearances very easily and very quickly without having to try and turn the whole engine over to check every single clearance. And what we found was, I think it's been re-shimmed not too long ago, because the shims do look quite new and fresh. But the exhaust cam was all shimmed up within specs, but most of the inlets, I think there's only 2 inlets that were actually in spec, and they're actually too tight, which that's obviously not good, as if as it gets some heat into it, it can then close up completely and stop the valve actually shutting, and you will then lose compression on that cylinder. But I don't think it got to that point. Where's my clearances? So surprisingly, these Lotus engines are actually quite tight on the clearances anyway. The inlets are 5 to 7 thou, and the exhaust is 7 to 12 thou. Right, as I was saying, before we had camera operator issues, we got the valve clearances all sorted out. There were 6 valve clearances which were extremely tight, and one of them was down to 3 thou. If we look at these parts on the bench, these are the cam carriers. We've got the exhaust and the inlet, and they're quite a simple little setup, really. They have these buckets and shims to do the valve clearances. So I've refaced that one. Well, I've refaced all of them apart from number 1 and number 8. And lucky enough, they only needed a couple of thou taken off of them to get them into tolerance. So all I had to do that was a bit of emery paper on a flat surface, a bit of WD-40, just face them down a little bit. But the reason that these were leaking in the first place is it's had the wrong sealer used. If we look, it's just got this kind of hard, sort of weird sealer, which is not the correct stuff for these. You're supposed to use a special anabolic sealer, something like Hylamar 2000, which is specifically designed for jointing 2 aluminium faces together. So that's why it was leaking in the first place. Probably when the last person done the valve clearances, because I don't think it's done a lot since. One, they didn't shim it up quite correctly, and two, they used the wrong sealer, which was the big cause of it. So obviously we've got the cam covers off, which we're going to clean up and repaint in the correct wrinkle finish. We've got the timing belt tensioner off, and I think we can probably rebuild it, as all we need to rebuild it is a new bearing. This one actually looks to me like it's possibly the original one. It's a bit rumbly when you spin it. You're not going to be able to hear that on camera, I don't think. No, but it is rumbly. It's not far off failing. And where it's been sat in the past, you can see it's got bits of old rubber belt sort of bonded onto it, which have gripped onto it, which is where it's been sat, and it's not off of this belt. So at some point it's had the belt changed without changing the tensioner. So we're going to replace that. Hopefully we can get a bearing and not have to replace the whole tensioner, because they are extremely expensive, as are a lot of parts we find on this Lotus. But we've got the uprated Gates belt for it as well. The customer wanted the uprated belt, which is reinforced, so we've got him that one. So the Lotus engine is coming along very well. If we go and look at the rear suspension, we'll show you what we've done on that. Right, on the rear suspension, we've replaced both rear wheel bearings, as they had a bit of minor play in them. But when we actually took them out, they were completely shot. I'm surprised they didn't have a lot more play in them. They pretty much fell apart. So while it was apart, we're giving the trail arms a lick of paint, cleaned up the aluminium hubs, with some new nylox on the actual hub as well. The carrier. Clean up the drive shafts and the lower arms, and we've also given the springs a quick lick of paint. And we've also replaced the lower, mind blank now. We've also replaced the lower bushes in the shock absorbers. We actually put polybush ones in there. They're quite easy to get hold of if anyone wants to know what they are. They're actually Spitfire GT6 front lower bushes. So they direct fit. I'm waiting just for some new nylox. I'm out of stock of new nylox on that side to put some new nylox on there. The heat shield we've got to do something with. Straighten it up and then trim it a little bit. The exhaust was blowing, and that's what's caused this. It's actually melted it as the exhaust runs past inside here. So it was blowing. There's a joint right here, and it was blowing, and it's melted the aluminium. But something I will point out as well, which is a massive safety issue on Lotuses, the hub nut. The other side was okay. This side, the threads are completely and utterly knackered. It hasn't damaged the drive shaft, luckily. The threads on the drive shaft are perfect. But if we look carefully, I don't know if the camera will pick it up, inside, the threads on the nut are completely shot. So, and this nut is the only thing holding your back wheel to the car on this. And they're torqued up to 200 foot-pounds, which is 171 newton meters, I think if my math is right. So extremely tight, and because of the way it's set up, usually a lot of cars usually have the hub pressed into the bearing. Not on the Lotus. On the Lotus, you've got the bearing pressed into this carrier. The drive shaft then goes through the bearing. It's a very tight fit through the bearing, and then the hub just slides on to the actual splines. It doesn't actually slide into the bearing. It's not pressed in. So the only thing holding your back wheel to this car is that one single nut, which is probably a bit of a design flaw, really. So it has to be right. Otherwise, you'd have your wheel come flying off down the road, which you really don't want to happen. So on most cars, you have a brake disc on here with a carrier. So if that nut did fail, yeah, it would collapse a little bit, but it wouldn't actually physically come off the car. But not on this. That is the only thing. So I'm waiting for a new one to arrive, so I can then put that together, because at the moment the car is stuck on the lift and I can't put the wheels back on. So yeah, I'm waiting for that to arrive so I can put it back together. So I think that's where we're up to on the Lotus. we probably will get some more done on it next week. I've got a few jobs coming in at the beginning part of the week to be sorted, but we will get back on it towards the end of the week and hopefully press on with it. Maybe even be somewhere close to putting the engine back in by the end of the week. We'll have to see how the work pans out and what these other jobs tie into. But I think that's it for the Lotus. The other thing we've got is the Red Stag is back. We picked that up on Friday from my dad's from having all the metalwork done. So we've done a bit of a bit. I think we put photographs in last week of all the metalwork finished, but we've got the car back now, so we'll have a quick walk around it, and you can see how good and straight the car actually is now. Obviously, it's still got dings and dents in the other panels, but I mean, the metalwork itself and all the gaps are really straight. So we're going to have a look at it. Right, we'll have to excuse the wind and the sun, but here she is. So it's had new front wings, new front inner arches, and the front inner arches, when I ordered them, I didn't realise that they didn't come with the extension on them. So my dad had to make new wheel arch extensions for it on the inner arches. It's had full sills. If we open the door, it's not had just the outer sill, like cover sills. It's had full brand new outer sills, which they go right behind the back wing, hence why the lower back wing has also been replaced, as it was rotted anyway. So the lower back wing was removed so the sill could be fitted correctly. This door, that was in one horrible nasty mess. It was actually full of lead. The whole end of the door had been sculpted with lead, and so had the bottom. So my dad's remade the end of the door. He's then remade the complete bottom for the door. If you come around and have a look at this door, so he's made the complete bottom up to here, all underneath, the whole bottom in one, so that it's as it should be. If we close the door, all the catches have been fitted, so that way we know they'll fit and everything's been lined up in the metalwork. So the gaps are absolutely perfect. You would not get any better on a Stag. If you look at the door gaps, if I just pull the door back out a little bit, your gaps are absolutely perfect. Same with the bonnet. This car was actually slightly skew-if. It had a slight knock on this corner that we found when, well, my dad found it when he took the front wing off. When he took this front wing off, this front wheel arch, inner wheel arch, was all badly battered. So it had a bit of a knock on this corner, and it had slightly altered the front of the car. It knocked all the panel gaps out. So the whole front end has been realigned to the bonnet, as this is the only way you can redo it, is to use the bonnet to get all your gaps right. So the whole front end's been realigned. Same story on this side. Excuse me. It had front inner arches, front wing, full sill, lower back wing. Where is that bit of lead? Here's some of the bits that come out of it. Some of the wreck. That's foil. By the look at that, it's like tin foil. Yep, tin foil and filler and mess. That's what that looks like. It's part of the inner arch at one point. Here's one part of what the door bottom had. So if we look at that door on that side, that is where your door card goes on. This is the right hand door. So that's that gap. If we turn it round, that shouldn't be like that. That's, I think, the original door bottom there, or is it a plate that's been put in? One of the two. And it shouldn't be two skins, definitely not. And if you look at the thickness of this end, it's all solid lead, and it is extremely heavy. Solid lead, all been leaded up. I mean, look at the thickness of that there. It is absolutely horrendous. The car had quite a lot like that round it. So it's now all nice and straight. Gaps are all good. The boot lid, he's repaired the boot lid for us as well. and he's also realigned the boot lid. So had a new corner put on this boot lid and a small piece through here as the skin had rotted. So the piece through here, which is unusual on these. Usually the base goes first, but this one's in really good condition. Usually all this goes first, which this one hasn't. So I don't know why it hasn't, but yeah, unusual for that to go for there before the underside. But yeah, he's realigned the boot lid as well, as the boot lid was too curved. So it's now nice and flush. So the gaps, it's going to be a very nice car with, now it's had all the metalwork done. So that's the only way you can rebuild a car, is to get the metalwork right first. Once the metalwork is right, you stand a chance of getting it straight, prepping and painting it, and you can have a better car to start off with. You've got a good base there. So it's going to be a lovely car when it's finished. So we've just got to get it stripped, prepped, painted, and start doing the slight modifications to it that the owner wants, because we're going to, if anyone remembers rightly, it's got a 3.5 litre Rover in it, and we're going to put a bit more power in it with a camshaft, nice exhaust system and things like that. So he wants around sort of 200 to 230 horsepower, which is quite easily done in one of these. So it'll make it a really nice car, and it's going to be a bit of fun as well. So, but I think that is all we have this week. We will put the picture of the Jag in the video with the core plug, etc. So please like and subscribe, and we will see you next week.